Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. A couple of different things happened over the weekend and I want to discuss them in this video. The first thing I want to discuss though is that the HRIC, that would be the head rapscallion in charge, my dog Sebastian, turned 1 year old. And I wanted to do one of those very like millennial dog mom things and throw him an entire birthday party. There's this app, if you have a reactive dog or like a dog that doesn't do so well with lots of other dogs and you don't know how it would do at like a dog park or something like that, or maybe you just don't like that environment, like with your dog being around other dogs it doesn't know, but you don't have a lot of your own space. There's this app called Sniff Spot where you can rent backyards and things are rated. It's kind of like Airbnb for like backyards or for property where people are like, yeah, you can bring your dogs and play. And I was gonna do that. I was gonna use Sniff Spot to get him like a little backyard and invite over, let's see, I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know a couple of different dogs. And then living in this apartment complex where everybody has a dog, I was like, I'm gonna invite people and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, not knowing how he would behave, I was like, you know what, let's chill, maybe next year. So this year I took him to my parents' house. I hadn't been back there in a little while, so that was nice. He played with our family dog that is a little bit older and a little bit fatter. So they played a little bit, but eventually the family dog, the older one, Cooper, he was over it. Then I helped my dad clean all the blood off of their deck when Sebastian did cut his paw again. And I thought I might have to take him in for stitches, but I think it's that same cut from when he was running in the bushes the other day. I talked about it in my seasonal depression video. So it's that same cut, but it just opened up again and he was bleeding all over the backyard. And so that was fun. But after we cleaned that up, he came home, he slept for like 13 hours. And then the next day I gave him just a bunch of treats. He got some cookies, he got a little cake. I dressed him up in a little outfit. And I will say I fumbled the birthday shoot though. I was not ready. I brought him out in front of this green screen. Where were my lights? Where was my space? Look how serious my little baby is. He was so serious for his picture. I wasn't ready. I let him down. And then I took him out on my patio, but I still wasn't ready. Like, what is this in his little, this is where he sits and kind of like watches the neighborhood. So he was ready for his portrait. I wasn't ready. And hopefully on our Christmas pictures, we'll be on one accord. That was fun, celebrating my little puppy. And now I'm gonna get into some information that you probably care about, that you actually care about, which are 2 stories that broke either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And I'm gonna talk about them now. I'm gonna start off with one story that is so interesting in the way it keeps unfolding and kind of won't go away. And that is between Derrick Jaxn and his wife, well, I guess now soon to be ex-wife, Derrick Jaxn. So when I first started on YouTube, one of my first videos was entitled, Surprise, Derrick Jaxn Has Always Sucked. I think that's what it was called. And I made that video because he was caught in a cheating scandal back then. He has made a living off of telling women what to look for in a man, telling women what a man does when he wants you, telling women. Derrick Jaxn is part of what I think is the most egregious subsect of men. Well, not the most egregious. We still have the podcast bros and we have all that, but he definitely is on my shit list when it comes to men who pander to women's emotions in order to build their platform, but actually are not the men that they purport to be at all. I cannot stand this. And we see it a lot with men who call themselves dating and relationship coaches, but they actually have no dating experience and they have no solid relationship. And we see it a lot with men who claim to come from the church, because we all know, and I'm going to say something here, it might be something a little controversial, but I'm going to say it. Marriage in the church is definitely an idol for some people. It's why people get married at the age of like 18, 17 years old. As soon as that ink is dry on that birth certificate or that license or whatever that says, hey, you're an adult now, people are rushing to the altar because they know, according to what is taught in a lot of churches, you better be married or you're unholy. So they end up marrying the wrong person, and then churches end up treating people who are single, especially single past a certain age, like pariahs. And then you have people within the church, specifically men, that make it their point to talk down to women, about their single status. You know what I'm talking about. You see it. And they end up making millions and millions of dollars of talking about what they think women should do and this and that. And it's sickening to me for a couple reasons. First of all, nobody asked you. Get in your own marriage and shut up. And secondly, when you're looking at the realities of men and women, especially single men and women, especially within the church, especially within the Black church, the realities couldn't be any more different. You were talking about a group of people who are arguably in a very privileged position and a group of people who are dealing with a completely different set of social truths that they've got to navigate through. You don't have a right to speak to me about what you think I should do. That's just that's just how I feel. So anybody, anytime I see a man, in his office or his study somewhere talking about what women need to do and this and that and giving a whole bunch of, keep it. Shut it up. Also, my question is, if your own relationship is so great, then go to it. Go to it and be in it and shut up. But because the need is so great. And what is that need? The need is for emotionally available, commitment-minded men. The need is so great. When a man can present himself as that, even if it's just a character, we women, we just sop it up and we make these men millionaires and we buy their books and we go to their speaking functions and we go to their whatever else they're doing and we follow their Instagram pages and we are just all over it and we give them this platform. And what do they do with it? They go and they cheat on their wives. What do they do with it? They get in those DMs and they start talking to women and displaying the exact behavior they've been telling us to look out for. When I made that video and I said, surprise, Derrick Jaxn has always sucked, that's what I was talking about. That's why I titled it that. But what I didn't know when that first cheating scandal broke, what I didn't know was who he was married to. I didn't even know the man was married because at that point in time, I had really just pushed him all the way off my radar. I had stopped listening to any of his videos. I mean, when I would see his content, show up, I would just move past it. I don't want to hear it. Not from you. Go ahead somewhere. But I did notice that when he did do his videos, there was always a car seat in the back. So I figured that a lot of male relationship coaches, he had one or two babies somewhere by some baby mamas and now wants to tell people what to do. But I didn't know he was married. I don't think I ever saw a ring on his finger. So when the cheating scandal came out, I was like, a who, what now? He's got a what? And then we met his wife. I met her for the first time. I didn't know who she was. And they released this abomination of a video. And the reason why this video made me cringe so hard was not only because of the bonnet comment, which if you know about what happened, then she said, this is not a bonnet I'm wearing on my head. This is a helmet of salvation. And, she just got clowned and made fun of, just to the moon and back for that. But because it was very clear that she was not well. And I don't mean just because she was speaking in such strong, biblical overtones and everything she said, it seemed that she was not just spirit-led, but almost like a zealot, and she was coming at it from a certain angle where it seemed like, okay, this is maybe not the angle that I would expect from someone who was married to somebody like Derrick, who is such a media Svengali. He's so media savvy. I would not expect this to be his wife, and I would not expect them to come forward like this. So not only did it get me for that reason, but it also opened up my eyes to her character and to her past. And it wasn't hard to find out that information because all you had to do was look at her Instagram and look at the Instagram posts where she talked about who she had been in her life for a very, very long time. And for me, some of the things that she spoke about, such as having an issue with being darker skinned, maybe not feeling very attractive. There was one particular thing that she talked about where she said she found videos of a woman who was performing sexually in a way with a man that she was involved with. And those videos sent her down a rabbit hole of insecurity because she felt like she could not give him that same performance. I have many times had that same insecurity because while I have had a lot of wild, adventurous sexcapades in my life, it's true, I could, maybe when I'm older, that's what I'll write a book about because I definitely have a lot of those stories. It would be very X-rated, but I've never had a lover, and that's real. That's different. I've never had I had my fun Tinder, my fun vacation times scattered throughout my 20s and 30s, but I've never had a lover. I've never really been able to say, hey, this is the person that I go to, that I express the energy of my body with. This is somebody that I know he knows all the right places to touch me, and I know all the right places on him. And I think there's always people talking about, well, you got to tell a man what you want. You got to communicate. And for someone like me who's always just had these wild circus kind of experiences, but not a whole lot of two people being really attracted to each other and really coming together and communicating and sharing their bodies. When I do see evidence of that, when I do see people talking about that, I'm just kind of like, because I've never experienced that. And so I can imagine maybe feeling like you can't match up to what other women can do, to what other people can do, because you just haven't had the same experience. Now, she also talked about some other things that had happened within her life and that had happened to her as far as like being attacked, or that had happened to her as a result of like various sexual crimes committed against her that I cannot relate to. But there were some things that I could really relate to. However, upon reading what I read, I learned that this is the type of woman who is very obsessive. And she's the type of person who needs to trade one obsession for another obsession. And to me, it seemed like she traded being obsessed with what other women were doing, what her husband was thinking about other women, which I'll get back to that in a second, what people thought about her, what she thought about herself. She traded that for an obsession with the Bible and with God. And I'm not going to say too much there because I don't want to make it sound like I'm reducing anybody's religion, or I'm trying to, write it off as just, what's the word? It starts with an H, being, hysterical. But I will say that it does seem that she is the type of person who either she's all one thing or she's all another thing. There's no balance there within her. And I don't think that's healthy with anything. I really, really don't. And so when I saw them come out as a couple and I found out more about her, I couldn't understand how that marriage worked anyway. I couldn't understand what was going on with that. But according to them, they were going back in, they were going to work on it. She then developed a coaching business where she's showing women how to make it through dealing with infidelity. And I mean, I let them go. I said, you know what? That's none of my business. She's none of my business. He's none of my business. I'm not a fan of his. I couldn't believe when he popped back up making the same videos, talking about the same stuff. But if that's how he makes his money, I understand. And so I wrote them off. It wasn't until a couple of weeks ago when she came out with a whole curse. And she cursed basically anybody on the internet who had anything to say about her and her husband. And I won't play it because I know there are a lot of people out there who are very sensitive to hearing that. I wasn't, because I find it hysterical. Now I can remember the word, but I find it hysterical that somebody thinks they have that much power over the universe, over God, over me, to speak anything onto my life as if I'm not already protected. Who do you think you are? So anyway, I did not care about that. I kind of just chuckled under my breath and kept going. But I was also confused as to why she was saying it. Like, sis, we're not worried about you anymore. What's going on? But apparently, I didn't know that the whispers had already started, that people had already started talking about them. I didn't know that Derrick had already filed for divorce and they were not even together. I had no idea. Until the pictures came out last weekend and Derrick was gallivanting around Miami with a young woman who, it should be noted, is leaps and bounds away from who Danae is purporting to be and trying to be. And by that, I mean, she spends a lot of her time, like a lot of women in church culture do, talking about the value of being a chaste woman, of being a, woman who is prudent in the way she presents herself. She covers up. How, you if you've been in the church culture, you get it, right? Only for Derrick to run around with this young woman. And it's just, if I was her, me personally, I'm not surprised, because I always thought he was a fraud anyway. But if I was Danae, especially with the history of insecurity that she has and low self-esteem and everything she had to kind of consistently battle over while being married to him, that would have been not just a gut punch. Like, I can't even imagine. Now, I will say if she truly has elevated and is no longer in that same frame of mind, it's very possible that she just didn't care, just wasn't surprised. But that would really hurt me. If I was talking about being a modest woman and covering up, and she's got a whole clothing line that's all about modesty, and instead of being a hot girl, being a holy girl, she had this whole thing of having a holy girl summer. And this is a video from her Instagram where she is swimming in a pool fully clothed and, you know, smiling with him or doing whatever that faces that he's making. It seems very disingenuous, especially now when you know that he was really thinking about leaving her the whole time. So, but that's her vibe. And so for him to leave that and go to this, it's just, whew, it makes him look worse than it makes her look, but it does make me deeply feel for her. Final thing I want to say though is I can't imagine being the type of man who would knowingly put my wife through what he has put her through. Again, I have to go back to her deep insecurities. One of the things she talked about was how she learned to deal with being with a man who gets so much attention, and not only gets so much attention, because I don't think that that's wrong. I used to always say the man that I end up with or that I had like babies with, I wanted him to be fine. I wanted him to be gorgeous because I wanted, you know, my kids to have some of that sauce. But I wanted him after the long time I had to wait. I wanted that man. I wanted people to walk in the room, see him, and just spit. He was so beautiful. I wanted to be overcome by his beauty. You know what I mean? So I have it's not, you know, I always wanted a more attractive partner, but I didn't want a partner who entertained what comes with that. I don't want you to be somebody who's like, oh, let me check these DMs. Let me get in here. No, you know what's up. I don't want you to be somebody who's like, oh, she's just a coworker. She's just a friend. No, you know what's up. I wanted somebody who was attractive, but aware at the effect that he could have on other people, but disinterested because he was so in love with me. And what gets me about Derrick is this whole time he's telling us, oh, this is what a man will do. This is what a man will do. And yet he's butt naked, booty, butt cheeks all over Instagram. She's talking about being a holy girl and being covered up, and he's posting stuff like this. And yes, I did say to myself, I wonder if this man is a Leo, because he seems so invested in showing off his body and wearing a tight and he doesn't have to be, but he is. He is. And so I just said to myself, what kind of an evil asshole? You know she struggles with feelings of insecurity and low self-worth. And you know that you keep yourself up. You know you're very attractive. You know you use emotional intelligence to build your mostly female platform. You know this. But instead of chilling and not entertaining and calming down, and I don't know how he handled everything in his private life. I don't know how he handled, but according to what I've heard, he was always treating her wrong. He was always entertaining other women. It sounded like she'd been going through hell for a long time. And with that being said, I think that this divorce is maybe the best thing for her. And what I hope she comes out of it with is a feeling of balance. I don't have to lean so hard in one direction. Even though there's nothing wrong with storing yourself up with the spirit and with the word, but at the same time, I feel like it's, like I said before, she's either all in one direction or all in another. And the healthiest way to be, I think, is to be a balance somewhere in the middle, to have a balance. And I look at her and I don't see that, at least from what she puts out online. And we have seen time and time again that extreme religious rhetoric and that extreme leaning into, again, do whatever you want, live your life how you want, but we've seen it end up very badly for people. And so I hope that she comes out of this feeling renewed and feeling restored. And I also hope that they're able to co-parent. They have kids together. There was somebody sitting in that car seat. You know, they used to always be behind him when he'd be talking. So they have kids together. And I hope that this situation is okay when it comes to their children. And I also hope that she's really loved in her life. I hope that she meets somebody and she's really loved, and he's not somebody that makes her feel like she has to fight for her life on social media. He's not somebody that makes her feel like she has to convince the masses, I'm okay, we're okay. He's somebody that makes her feel secure. And as far as Derrick is concerned, I hope his audience sees what he really is. That's all I can say about that. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, This next subject I'm going to talk about, I was actually going to do a fully dedicated video to it, but I decided to go ahead and chill a little bit and just make it a part of this video. I'm going to go ahead and do a trigger warning though before I get started. I am going to be talking about interracial relationships, and I'm going to be talking about them in a way that might sound like I am not in favor of them, which is not true. And so if you are watching this and you're a person of color and you have a partner that's not a person of color, I don't care. I want you to understand it is what it is. I have dated interracially for many years. I thought my last name would be, I don't know, Smith. And then I thought it would be, I don't know, Goldstein. And then I thought it would be Valdez. I thought that I in my mind, I was like, I'm going to have this husband. He's going to look this way. Or this is, based on the type of men who were answering my messages on dating apps, it looks like I'll be dating this kind of a guy. And, here we are. But I want you to know this is not an attack on interracial relationships as a whole. What I'm going to attempt to be talking about is the very real interpersonal and intercultural relationship between Black men and Black women, the very real issue that lies at the center of the vastly diminished Black family, and mostly, what do Black men and Black women owe each other, if anything? My goal is not to offend anybody. However, I can understand if you're not coming at it from my perspective, how you might take offense. Okay, what did I just say all that for? Why give that big disclaimer? Because I want to talk about Trevor Noah. Now, over the weekend, I think it was Friday, Trevor Noah released, he said goodbye to The Daily Show, or maybe his speech went viral on Friday. Maybe he did it on Thursday, I don't know. But he said goodbye to The Daily Show for his very last episode. And I think it's interesting that he's having to leave. I think Trevor he's such an intelligent comic, and he's obviously a very smart man. I've really liked a lot of his takes over the past couple years. The things that have gone viral on social media, like I repost them, I heart them. Back when I was on Twitter, I think he's incredible. But he didn't have the sauce. He just didn't have the ability to really gather the crowds and get the numbers. And that is what it is. I don't know if it's just because he was a man of color. I'm not sure. I kind of think, I'm like, what if, what was his name? Keegan-Michael Key. So from Key and Peele, the tall one, I'm like, could he have hosted a show like this? But I don't think he's very politically minded. Well, at least not openly. But when I think about the effect that Jon Stewart had on just the world through that show, I wonder if it was based on his color that he couldn't build the platform, or was it his character? Like, whatever it was, I know that The Daily Show wasn't the same when he stepped in, but I do think he was a good host of it. I just know he didn't have the same effect on audiences. But that's not my point. My point is that he made a speech where he said goodbye. And he said goodbye to Black women in particular, and he said thank you to Black women. And he spent some time building us up and talking about how brilliant and wonderful the Black women that had affected him and had helped him had been in his life, and the Black women that had supported him consistently. And this falls in with a similar rhetoric that I hear said about Black women a lot. I see it said a lot by political parties as well. I remember when Biden got into office, or I think it was Biden, I remember a lot of people saying, well, that's because of Black women. They came down and they did the thing. And I remember that made Ava Longoria very upset. But moving on, Black women have a history of being uplifted for their character, their strength, their positivity, their unconditional love, their dedication, the support. We are consistently, as a group, noted for those characteristics. And one of the things that I want to say is I loved the fact that Trevor took the time to thank Black women for what they had done and how they have affected him. If you don't know, Trevor's mother is a Black woman. And it doesn't surprise me that he feels a very close kinship with and wanted to take a moment and say thank you. However, his comment did hit me and make me feel a type of way, because Trevor Noah also is in a group of men, a long line of a group of men who are creatives, who are comics, who are directors, who are writers, who are Black men with a public platform, who choose to say they are grateful for us and they like working with us and we're so powerful and wonderful. That's for public. But when it comes to the women that they make their families with, when it comes to the women that they make into wives, when it comes to the women that they bring into their homes and they want to live with every day, Black women don't make the cut. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching a movie, and it's a really good movie. It's on Netflix, and it was called Is That Black Enough for You? And I'm watching it and I'm just learning all this stuff about like Black history and Black history with cinema. But as a Black woman who has had a certain experience in this country, experience that is well documented when it comes to Black women, I could not help but notice that many of the directors and many of the characters that had changed Black cinema and Black representation forever, when it came to the women that they chose to make their wives, when it came to the women that were the mothers of their children, they did not choose Black women. And this is important for me to point out because on top of Black women being thanked for being so supportive and so kind and so brilliant and so nurturing, we also have a history of being abandoned when it comes to being wives and being mothers. And then we are blamed for the downfall of the Black family, as if we alone did that. I have to go back to the way Black single mothers are often spoken about, and the way that not only Black men will criticize and rip apart Black single mothers, and they will express so much hatred and disappointment in the women that raised them and had to take on a patriarchal and maternal stance in the home because the men were not there. But I also want to talk about Black women who attack Black single mothers, especially I see it a lot coming from the younger generations. Well, why can't you just wait for marriage, get married, as if marriage is not also a difficult road and sometimes a far off goal that Black women have to fight to reach. And so I think about this, and I think about Trevor's comments, and I think about his private life, and I think about the fact that he falls into a pattern of Black men in very public spaces who make a very, very clear choice to leave Black women behind when it comes to how they live privately. I was a little confused and I'm a little offended. And when I saw people talking about this online, there were two ways that they took it. The first way was, well, if we're so great, if you love us so much, then why don't you love us? We would love to see you wife one of us up. We would love to see you actually take one of us out on a date. How great would that be to see? And some people said, well, why is it important? Why can't he just date who he wants to date? Why do you care who he's with privately? Let the man do what he wants to do. And I just have to go back to this very, very simple point. Representation is important and it matters. And I think that if you had Black men who have this platform, Black men who are in positions to really make a statement, choosing Black women to live their lives with privately, choosing Black women to make families with, I think it would help reverse a very tricky narrative, a very sticky narrative that exists about Black women and marriage. Why does it matter what men in public do with their private lives? Because they send a message, and representation matters. I remember how good it felt when the president's wife looked like me. I remember almost being surprised that that was the choice that he'd made, but being very, very grateful. To piggyback off of the whole, why does it matter he can date who he wants to date? I read in some comment section, someone said, well, if you care so much about, what Black men are doing, regarding who they date, especially these ones that are in the public eye, you're really contributing to a scarcity mindset. And, I tiptoe around words like that because I don't want to offend anybody, but all I have to say is it a scarcity mindset when the resources are actually scarce? If it's raining and I go outside and I say, oh my God, it's raining, have I spoken that into existence? Have I spoken that over my life? Or have I just told you about the weather? There are so many studies out there, the research is out there, that when Black women are looking for a marriage mate, statistically, it's tougher for us to find them. I think when I was a young woman, the statistic was something like 42.4% of us will never marry, but now it's 62%. And that's a 20-year change in data. And I would love to see that number reversed. I would love for the babies who are in elementary school right now, middle school, high school, I would love when they came of age if that social reality was switched. And it's not just going to be switched by Black women also dating out. Someone said that. They said, well, if we judge him, then, they can judge us for what we do. And I saw it put so well on social media one day when someone said, when Black women date interracially, a lot of times it's a response and a reaction to a shift that's already occurred. Which brings me to, what do Black men and Black women owe each other, if anything? So, like I said before, I'm not against interracial dating. I understand love happens regardless. I also understand life is too short to just say, okay, well, if I can't have a Black partner, I'm not gonna have anybody. But when I go on to social media and I see things like this, and when I grew up hearing things like this, when I know as a Black American woman that there are entire groups of Black men who have decided that they're just going to leave the country and go somewhere else to find a wife. And Black women are expected to just laugh off things like this. Oh, okay, go do what you want to do. We don't want you no way. But I would prefer if they were called out on their misogynoir, and if they actually took that call out to understand that they're doing way too much for no reason. There are so many good, intelligent, capable, raised in the church, raised to be wives, know how to cook, wonderful Black women who desire and are deserving of a spouse. But we just so happen to be a part of a race of people where the internalized self-hatred is so strong, and the patriarchs who lead our culture are the biggest sufferers of that internalized self-hatred. And so often they are the biggest holders of that misogynoir. And as a result, a deficit is created. And I would love it if, instead of having the attitude of, they don't owe me nothing, they can go, we were honest about the fact that, no, we actually are owed dignity. We actually are owed respect. We actually are owed the option of having good men to choose from to build our families with, without having to farm out our desires to every single other culture of men on this earth. No other race of women has to depend on perhaps the goodness of the heart of a man in another culture the way Black women do. It's unfortunate, it's upsetting, it's not fair. So in conclusion, when I saw what Trevor said, and then I see what he does in his private life, and my thing too is, you don't want no variation. You don't want no, come on, man. Like me, if you were to look at the men that I went on dates with when I was dating, it was like the United Nations in there. It honestly was. I really was open to whatever Tom, Dick, and Harry fool. I really was open. I was very open back then. So with Trevor, I'm like, you really making a choice. And I also think it's interesting that a lot of times what race your mother was, that's the race you choose to date, but not with Trevor. I think that that's interesting. But anyway, I totally respected what he had to say. I think that's wonderful. But Black women deserve to see themselves loved too. And a lot of times societal change is created when men who have positions of power and are in the public eye choose to make deliberate decisions. And deciding who you're going to love, especially when we're in the social situation that we're in right now. And I'm speaking really specifically about Black American people. And you could argue, well, Trevor is an immigrant from South Africa. Well, he'd been here long enough. All right, he'd been here long enough. But I'm really speaking to Black American people because I don't think the same reality is the same in, immigrant cultures as it is for Black Americans who were like born and raised here and can trace their roots back to slavery, XYZ. But I think sometimes you do have to say, hey, we have a problem here. The Black family has been being splintered since slavery. Black women have been left on their own to raise their kids, to have their families. They have been on their own to live their lives for a long time in increasingly high numbers. And I, as a man, I see this happening, and I'm going to make a decision to at least try dating a woman of that race. If I can talk about how great they are, let me also show that by attempting to love one. And how would that look? And how would that change my life? And how would that maybe change the life of a young Black creative who's out there trying to make it in Hollywood? And I remember watching this movie years ago where Black women were like, yeah, if we want to be out here in LA and Hollywood, we have to understand that our chances of dating a Black man they're very short, they're very low. They're very low. And what a great world it would be if Black men in those positions said, hey, the Black family as it is something to reinvest in. And I'm going to make a decision to do that. I'm at least going to try. Again, you can meet whoever you want. You can fall in love with whoever you want. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I see a lot of men who I question, did you even try? Were you completely against the idea of loving a Black woman at all? You can lift her up. She's such a good worker. She's nice and steady, nice and sturdy, but we deserve to be loved too. And I will rejoice when one day that statistic is not no 62%. We're not no 3 times less likely to get married because of this shortage and this shortage and this shortage and this decision, excuse me. But the gap is closed a little bit. There's a show that I watch called New Amsterdam, or I used to watch it a couple years ago. And on the show, there was a Black doctor, and he was like a surgeon. And he had been dating and was in love with and had a great connection to this young white nurse at his hospital. And he told her, I actually can't take this any further because I'm looking for my wife and I want a Black wife because that's the family that I grew up in and that's how I want to raise my kids. And she was like, well, but that's not fair. You know, we're in love. I don't get it. And he said, I have to make a point to find a Black woman to love, not because love can't happen anywhere, but because I believe in the Black family. And as a man, it is my job to do what I can to try and continue to preserve it. I love you. This was great, but I want to make a different decision for my life. And that played out in front of me. And I said, wow. And I think I've received so much media training, and a lot of Black women have received a lot of media training. So we're used to having to say, oh, whatever, do whatever you want. But if people continue just doing whatever they want, we continue to be left behind. And this is not every Black woman's story. I want to say that. Not every Black woman is left behind. Not every Black woman is, we have the 62%, but we also have that other 38, right? And so that being said, if you saw what Trevor said and it didn't affect you, it didn't trigger you, then great. You live in a different life. That's fine. But don't be obtuse. Understand that there are some of us out there who have been hit by that statistic and hit hard by it. We've been told, I won't date you. I don't date Black women. We've had to go online and see men. Well, if it ain't snowing, I ain't going. And there are men that are saying this about us. And they're saying it because they know they can get away with it. And they're saying it because the men in positions of power, they're not setting an example. I want to see a world where Black women are praised for more than just how sturdy we are and how much we can lift you up. I want us to be praised for being beautiful wives, beautiful mothers, and I want us to be protected, and I want us to be loved, romantically loved, deeply so. And I want men in positions of power to make a statement by the women that they choose to love and they choose to live their private lives with, because it does matter. Representation matters. All right, so that is all I have for this little episode. I felt obviously very passionate about both of these subjects. I know people won't always agree with me, but that's okay. And as always, thank you for watching.